that country music hits, you know it's time for another hour of sports talk radio here on 95.3 WCHE. This is Locker Room Buzz. As I said, I'm CJ Tully, looking to give you guys the latest in sports. Lots to talk about here today in Philadelphia sports and in college football, as we have the playoffs just on the horizon. That'll be taking place Friday and Saturday this weekend. I'll have the full breakdown of every game, as well as all the news we've gotten in the last few weeks in college football. We know this coaching carousel has been crazy. That new job opening up at Michigan, I'll give you guys all of the time to scoop going on as to who could be that coach, who can fill that spot, as well as everything else going on in college football. And then with the Eagles, we have an Eagles picking up a huge win here. That defense locking down a lackluster Raiders team, but again, keeping them scoreless at that, and the Phillies making some moves. But let's start off here with the Philadelphia Eagles, as I mentioned, picking up a big win. They win 31-0 at home against the Raiders in a snowy somewhat game, as outside the stadium it was 7 feet of snow. 7 inches of snow. But lots going on here with this Eagles team. Lots to take away from this game. Again, they were playing a lackluster opponent in the Raiders, who are now 2-12 on the season. But I think we have to look at the overall scope of this Eagles win. We saw a lot of good things here with Jalen Hurts. He goes for 175 yards with 3 touchdowns, only 3 incompletions on the game. And then you look at Saquon Barkley, and he was so close, 2 yards away from hitting my parlay with 80 yards. He had 22 carries for 78 yards with a touchdown. Tank Bigsby, he goes for 57 yards. And Jalen Hurts, I mentioned what he did through the air. He also rushed for 39 yards. So we're starting to see Jalen Hurts really get out of the pocket more and use those legs as we know he can. And I think this is a good thing going forward for the Eagles. A lot of people have been clamoring for this, that we need Jalen Hurts to be more mobile, to really use his legs and not just sit there in the pocket and look downfield for an unopened wide receiver. So glad to see all of that. Biggest receiver on the day was Dallas Goedert, 6 receptions for 70 yards with 2 touchdowns. He did have a wide open drop in the end zone, makes up for it with a touchdown just a possession later. So like to see that from Dallas Goedert. He was really Jalen Hurts' go-to guy in the beginning of the season. Kind of saw him get away from that as he was starting to target A.J. Brown a lot more and force-feeding him there. But now we're seeing Dallas Goedert get back involved in this offense, and that is great for the Eagles down in the red zone. We also had Devontae Smith, 50 yards, and A.J. Brown, 41 yards on 2 receptions with a touchdown. So didn't have to do too much on the offensive side of the ball here. Jalen Hurts with those 3 touchdowns, but didn't have to really use A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith all that much. Just 2 receptions for each of them. On the defensive side of the ball, Nakobe Dean has been everywhere. 8 tackles on the day, 5 of those being solo, and 2 tackles for loss. Nakobe Dean coming back has been huge for this linebacking crew here with the Philadelphia Eagles. We see him now moving Jahad Campbell down to the bench. He's more of a rotational player now. But love what I'm seeing here by Nakobe Dean. Cooper DeJean, another guy who's been all over the field so far this year. He had 4 tackles in this game, all solo tackles. We saw him kind of get aggressive with Tyler Lockett. I loved that. Loved the fans getting involved in that as well, yelling Coop down on the field. But again, this Eagles defense, being able to lock down this Raiders team to no points. I mean, no matter who you're playing, these are still professional players, and to not let them get down the field, that was big. They did play their former Super Bowl champion quarterback, Kenny Pickett, as he was able to get the final kneel down in last year's Super Bowl. He goes 15 for 25, just 64 yards with an interception. Ashton Genty, he was on the field too. It was good to see him playing. Obviously not watching too many Raiders games, but he goes 9 carries for 35 yards. He's kind of been a bust this season, and I know it's not with the best line that he's working with, but I said this last year in the Heisman candidacy that I didn't think this was going to be something that plays out well in the NFL. Yes, he was breaking tackles, he was running people over, but he was playing in the Mountain West over there for Boise State, so he wasn't necessarily playing the greatest of competition or the highest skilled players, and we kind of saw that happening there in the playoffs when they had to take on Penn State, and they got absolutely ran through. Genty was not really a factor in that game. This season, though, for Genty, on 200 carries, 700 yards with just 4 touchdowns. I mean, this is not the kind of production people were expecting from him out of the draft. He goes number 6 to the Raiders. I still think it's early in his career to say it's a full-on bust, but I definitely think Genty was expecting to do more for this offense. You pair him up with a great tight end in Brock Bowers. You thought that Geno Smith was going to be something this year. He ends up getting benched. You bring in Tyler Lockett. I think there was a lot more excitement around this Raiders team before the season than there is now. Now you see Pete Carroll kind of on the hot seat, coming back here with I believe it's his first losing season of his coaching career, or at least in a long time, as he had a lot of winning seasons there with the Seahawks. But really curious to see what this Raiders team can be coming out of this season, how they can regroup, what they can add to really start to figure this thing out, because there is a lot of talent coming out of college on this team. It's just, can they make it work? Maybe Pete Carroll wasn't the guy to go to. Maybe it wasn't looking back on an old coach. Maybe you need to bring in one of these guys who's now up for a coaching candidacy in the college football season and look to bring him up here in the NFL. Maybe that's what you need. I know I've been saying the same thing with the Giants with having so much young talent. Maybe they need to look for a more college-minded coaching candidate there to bring them in and see if they can work better with these younger players. But curious to see what the Raiders can do going forward. Again, Ashton Jeanty, in my eyes right now, is not going to pan out to be the same player that he was in college football. I think you have to look at the divisions and everything else that he played in and the conferences, and I think that makes a difference there for them. But getting back to the Eagles now, they are now sitting on the season 9-5. They're sitting atop the East, and obviously there's no real way for the Eagles to blow this. They would have to lose out, Cowboys win out, and I just don't see that happening whatsoever. The Eagles are going to have a pretty simple schedule coming up. You're going to be taking on the Commanders, then you're going to be at the Bills, and then taking on the Commanders to finish out the season. And this Commanders team has just not been great this season. I mean, we've seen it time and time again. Now they pick up a big win this week against the Giants. I don't know how much that says about them. You did see Jackson Dart still throw for 245 yards with 2 touchdowns on that Commanders defense, but they win that one 29-21. Commanders now sitting 4-10 on the season. So again, not too concerned about this. Jaden Daniels, don't believe he's going to be playing the remainder of this season. So we'll see what happens. Who's at quarterback? It might be Mariota there. You have Zach Ertz now out for the season as he had a huge injury last week. So again, not too scared with the Eagles' schedule remaining. Again, they are going to have the Bills on the road in that little time frame there. But the Bills haven't really scared me either. Now, they had a huge comeback win against the Patriots, which I'll get to later in the show. But you look at what this Eagles team is able to do, and I'm not too scared about Josh Allen. I think our linebacking core is solid enough right now that we can just kind of lock down Josh Allen. We can play a little bit of a spy, and I don't think he's going to be that much of a factor on the ground. Then you look at the wide receivers, and nobody really scares me. You have Khalil Shakir. He's probably your best receiver right now, but I have him in pretty much every fantasy league, and I can tell you he does not get the ball all too often. James Cook is going to be somebody they're going to have to stop on the ground. I've been saying for weeks now that I think he's kind of been able to carry Josh Allen and this Bills offense for a while now, and it's kind of gone under the radar. But we'll see what they can do coming into this game. That's going to be next weekend, so I'll be previewing that this upcoming week, where I will be live on Christmas Eve, so be able to check out that show there. It's going to be a lot going on, a lot of different things to kind of keep in the holiday spirit. It's still going to be sports themed, but we'll be going more towards the Christmas vibe. So be able to check that out next week, next Wednesday. That'll be Christmas Eve. Lots going on with that. But back to the Eagles here as I keep getting off track. The Eagles do still look like they have a great shot here in the NFC. Now, I know, a few losses here and there. You're losing some bad opponents, but you look at the team overall, and I think they're starting to put it together. You're not seeing A.J. Brown complain as much. That's a big check mark. That was the biggest thing, I think, holding this team back from team chemistry and everything else that was going on. You look at this defense, and as I just mentioned, with being able to hold the Raiders to no points on the day, they have locked it down the past few weeks, and I am not one bit concerned about this defense. They've been doing a lot of this without Jalen Carter as well, so you bring him back into the mix. Hopefully he can come back next week. I think that's going to be a huge thing here. We've started to see Saquon Barkley get back involved, and that is going to be a key piece of this Eagles team making a deep run as he was last year. You didn't see him getting those holes early. We're starting to see him get 70, 60, 80-yard games now, which is a huge thing for this Eagles team. We saw him break a big run 2 weeks ago there, so look to see Saquon Barkley get more involved. We're going to be looking to see Lane Johnson get back in here hopefully sometime soon. That would be big for this offensive line to finally start to find some holes for Saquon Barkley to find. And Jalen Hurts, he has been playing well. Now, I know against the Chargers, he had those, 4 interceptions and a fumble, 3 interceptions and a fumble. That obviously cannot continue, but I don't think that was the biggest factor there as to what Jalen Hurts has been this season. Overall this season, he's still played well. I'm not overly concerned with Jalen Hurts. He's had 2,900 yards, 22 touchdowns to just 6 interceptions, and again, a lot of those coming in that game against the Chargers, so just one mess-up of a game. I still think people need to have faith in Jalen Hurts. I think he could still win this team another Super Bowl in his tenure here. I think this team just needs to put it all together, and we've seen this last year where it was very much around Saquon Barkley. This team was trying to find their identity this year and how they were going to be able to find their receivers, find Dallas Goedert. As I mentioned, he has been a huge part of the season, and they really geared to this defense. And Vic Fangio has gathered these guys to really lock down a defense and not need all that much around with the offense. You're able to kind of squeak out some wins early, which I know a lot of people did not like, but you're able to do that because of how well this defense has come together. And I think that's a huge thing here for this Eagles team to rely on when it comes to the playoffs, as they are still fighting for a 1 seed. I know it's getting pretty tight now with how that NFC West has been playing. I mean, you have 3 teams in there who are fighting for that 1 spot in the 49ers, Seahawks, and the Rams. Rams currently holding that one, but we'll get more to the West when we get to our NFL talk at the end of the show. But I do think the Eagles are still a very dominant team. Nobody scares me in the AFC right now, so if the Eagles can run a few teams here in the NFC and get to that Super Bowl, I am not scared whatsoever. We know the Chiefs are now out, and I think that the Eagles seriously put an end to that reign, which they did with the Patriots as well. So look to see here what this team can be going to the playoffs. Look for these next few weeks for them to kind of be trying new things. I think that is something you can really be doing against these Commanders games where you're going to have two of them. You're going to be able to really try new things because I don't think that this team is going to be able to put up much of a fight against your defense. Explore what you have on offense. Maybe in that Bills game you really lock in. You count that as the most important game of the season just to kind of show your team that you can compete with the best of the best. You saw that earlier this year with the win over the Chiefs, with the win over the Lions, with the win over the Rams, and all these teams that you weren't really able to get over the hump with a few years ago. You now find this Eagles team picking up those big wins. Same with at the Bucs. That was a huge win for this Eagles team as they weren't able to pick up a win like that in the past few years. So look for this Eagles team to continue to win. I am not scared going into the playoffs. Maybe not as scared as I was a few weeks ago where I thought this thing might have been over. But this Eagles team has shown me enough to give me hope, and I think it should give all of you guys hope as well. When we come back from this quick timeout, I'll be starting my college playoff talk, so stay tuned here on 95.3 WCHE. I'm your host, CJ Tully, and as I mentioned before the break, we have lots to get to here within the college football world. This is something we see now with a bit of different things here going on with the college search. I know I'd mentioned that in a few different episodes here where the college carousel here of the coaching bids here have been all over the place. We have the transfer portal opening and some big names taking place in that, and we had our Heisman ceremony just a few days ago. So as always, let's talk some college football. Heisman of the season. That was Fernando Mendoza. He wins the Heisman with 2,900 yards of the season and 33 touchdowns. He was my pick for Heisman since about the middle of the season. He just had so many key moments, and I think that that's what this year's Heisman candidacy came down to. It wasn't necessarily the stats. I was also big on Jeremiah Love. I think he is very deserving of more of an MVP kind of a style award. But the Heisman this year was more down to the key moments they had and how they were able to project their team to victories, and we saw this with Fernando Mendoza in a few different games. Starting off here in the Oregon game, on the road, goes down in the fourth quarter to bring them to a big victory, probably their biggest win, or obviously their biggest win, one of the biggest wins in the college football season. And now I think you can look at Oregon as a team who only lost to the best team in the country and to the Heisman, so I don't think that should hurt them as much with that loss being like that. Then you look at the Iowa game. Fernando Mendoza yet again going down the field in the fourth quarter against one of the best defenses in college football, and he's able to get it done yet again. And it doesn't stop there. You had the game against Penn State where you get sacked on the first play of the drive, brings you down to your own 5-yard line. You need a game-winning drive. He marches down the field, converts on third downs, and he's able to pick up an amazing touchdown in the back of the end zone with Omar Cooper Jr. toe-tapping back there. It was a phenomenal drive on the road against Penn State. Obviously not the same Penn State team, but the environment was still moving, and that Fernando Mendoza guy gets it done again. Then you can look most recently at the Big Ten championship game where he's taking on the number one team ranked in the country in Ohio State, and yet again he goes down and finishes a drive to give them the Big Ten championship victory. Fernando Mendoza did deserve the Heisman this year. His post-award-winning speech was phenomenal as well. He's seemingly a very humble guy. We didn't see the same thing, though, with his counterpart in Diego Pavia. Lots of drama going on about that. I don't know if anybody saw it the following day after the Heisman Trophy was announced, actually a few hours after it really all started, where he goes on and says F the entire committee there for not making him the champion. He then goes out and he has the whole thing going on against Indiana. Very, very not good stuff going on there. I'll just say that with Diego Pavia. Gives a very bad rep. He did come out and put on a bit of a statement afterwards saying he apologizes and he let his emotions get the better of him. But he's just carrying this persona that's not going to be very likable to these NFL teams. And it's going around now that he's not really going to be going to the NFL either way. He can obviously put himself in the draft, but it doesn't mean anybody's going to take him. He's a shorter quarterback. He's listed at 6 foot. There's just no shot he's 6 foot. He looked like a very little man compared to the rest of the candidates there at the Heisman Awards ceremony. But Diego Pavia did have a good season this year. 3,100 yards, 27 touchdowns on the ground. He had 826 yards with 9 rushing touchdowns. He's just giving off this persona of I'm too good for this. Very Johnny Manziel-like, and we know how that worked out for him when he got to the NFL. And then you look at somebody like Fernando, and he's just more humble and more appreciative of everything that he has. He thanks his family, thanks his God. And Diego Pavia goes on the opposite end of things and makes it all about himself, even though he lost. Just not a good look. A lot of people saying he's going to be one of the best XFL players to ever play. So we'll see what happens with that. He's also bidding here for himself to get another year in college football. We'll see if that happens or if anybody even wants to take him on, now seeing the drama that he has caused. Moving on, though, to another candidate we had this year was Jeremiah Love. He has officially announced that he's going to be going to the draft, and I think he's going to be a huge piece for any team that adds him. There's a lot of speculation he could be going to the Cowboys. I know Eric's going to be a big fan of that as a Cowboys fan and a Notre Dame fan. This season, Jeremiah Love, 1,300 yards with 18 touchdowns. This is going to be a guy that changes a culture immediately, and again, a very humble guy. Loved everything he was saying the other night. He's been able to do so much with this Notre Dame team. He was the only player in the Heisman top 4 who stayed with their team all 4 years of college, so a lot of credit to him there to stick through everything that has gone on with Notre Dame. And he was a huge piece of really getting C.J. Carr to be adapted to the college football scene here this season as a freshman. So that was doing it for everything with the Heisman. Again, Fernando Mendoza, congratulations. A big season for him, wins the Big Ten championship, wins the Heisman, and is now going into the college football playoffs as the 1 seed. Moving on, though, to some other college football news, we have Cheryl Moore getting fired from Michigan, and lots going on with that whole situation. There are a few different counts that he was charged on. He was arrested. I haven't seen that he's been out on bail or anything, so I'm not sure. Don't want to report false news. Not 100% sure where he is right now, but just horrible for his family, for the woman that was involved in it. They're breaking and entering, I believe, was one of the charges he had gotten with his wife. There was a lot of different things going on here and a lot of different rumors being started as to what these charges may be. But the moral of the story here for this sports talk show is that the job is open at Michigan, and there has been a lot of big names attached to this, but you do have to look at it in a broader sense as to what the Michigan culture has been the last few years. You have this situation now with Cheryl Moore. A few years ago, you had the cheating scandal with Jim Harbaugh. Obviously, Cheryl Moore had to pay the consequence of that, as he was the one who had to be taking the fine and the suspension there in the beginning of the season. He was the one who didn't get the coach. So lots going on with this Michigan culture. Most recently, they've had their quarterback, Bryce Underwood. He has unfollowed Michigan and taken them out of his bio, so we'll see if he is somebody who's maybe moving on to a new team next season after all of this drama. But there are big names still attached to this. It is still the Michigan Wolverines, and they've obviously gotten themselves to a high ranking over the years. So just going over some possible names here. Clark Lee from Vanderbilt, he's one of the names attached to this. You do have to keep in mind, though, that Clark Lee did just sign a new deal with Vanderbilt. So I'm not sure how that would all work. I guess you can buy him out and then he can move on, or maybe they could take on the contract. And not 100% sure how that would work. But Clark Lee from Vanderbilt is a possibility. Another big name, and this guy was really attached to that job over there with LSU, is Eli Drinkwitz. He's with Missouri, and we saw what he was able to do this season with Bo Prabula and how they kind of changed that culture as well. So Eli Drinkwitz, I'm on board with that hire there for them. Some other big names that are attached to this right now, you have Kyle Whittingham from Utah. I know a lot of people are a big fan of him and what he has done for his culture. I believe he was actually just fired from Utah, so we'll see what he can do if maybe he wants to stay in college football. I believe he was there for about 30 years with Utah. You then have Jesse Mitzer, the Chargers. I believe he's an offensive coordinator there for them. We'll see if he wants to join a team, maybe go down to college. He does have that connection there with Jim Harbaugh, so maybe they want to work that out there. Number 2 right now is Kalen DeBoer from Alabama. Now, he has said that he is very comfortable with Alabama, but his name has also been rumored with Penn State. Now, Penn State has obviously picked up their new head coach, but could Kalen DeBoer leave Alabama? We see that it's maybe not working all that well for him in the SEC after getting Washington to a national championship. I don't believe he's going to want out of Alabama just yet. I don't think that'd be a good look for him to give up on the SEC so quickly. But if you could get the job at Michigan, would that be enough to give Kalen DeBoer the reason to leave Alabama? We'll see about that. There is a lot of buzz around it, but again, not too sure how likely that would be for DeBoer to leave Alabama just so soon. And then the number 1 candidate right now, where a lot of names are linked, and I think this one makes the most sense, that's going to be Kenny Dillingham from Arizona State. He brought Arizona State to the college football playoffs last season. This year, they weren't able to get over the hump there in the Big 12 after a big loss early in the season. But we'll see what happens with them. I still like Kenny Dillingham. I think he'll be a big addition to this Michigan team if he is able to get it done. Obviously, didn't work in the Big 12 this year, but he is somebody who can really get the culture going. We saw what he did last year with the Cam Scatterbo and with the Sam Levitt. So I do think Kenny Dillingham is going to be the one to take this position on. I do think they need to get through their legal issues first and to kind of grab some people to come back to this Michigan culture, because right now you do have this speculation and all these things in the air that maybe it's not the greatest situation to just throw a coach into right now. But again, he is somebody that we're looking forward to get this position. Some other big college football news that we need to get into was the Army-Navy game last week, and thank you to all of our troops who serve, and this is always a fun time to watch this game and just see everybody, all the servicemen and servicewomen, all of their camaraderie around these teams. It's always a fun matchup. This year we saw the quarterbacks really running more as running backs, and this was something we expected headed into this game. Just seeing what they were able to do throughout their season right now, Navy was the favorite coming into this one, and they pick up the 17-16 win over Army. Cole Hilliams, their quarterback over there at Army, went 5 for 10 with 82 yards and an interception. But on the ground, 25 carries, 100 yards with a touchdown. Same thing on the other side for Navy's quarterback, Blake Horvath. We've seen him play very well this season. 7 for 14, 82 yards with an interception. On the ground, 34 carries for 107 yards with a touchdown. These quarterbacks were battling it out and throwing their bodies on the line. That's exactly what you would expect to see from an Army-Navy game. The lone receiver to have a lot of yards in this game was Eli Hendrich. He went 72 yards with 6 receptions and a touchdown. So, again, thank you to everybody. The game is always fun to watch, and I definitely, if you haven't seen it yet, I definitely recommend go watching it next year. It was always held at the Link, and then it was moved down to Baltimore, where they hold it now in Maryland. So, a very fun game to watch. Trump was there and everything, so very patriotic game. There's some other things going on in college football. Arch Manning, he is going to remain at Texas with the Longhorns. He did not have the season everybody would have expected. A lot of people is having him going into the draft this upcoming year. Smart on him to stay at the Longhorns. Now, I don't believe he has officially come out and made this statement, but it has been widely reported that he is going to be staying. So excited to see what he can do next season. Maybe he gets the Longhorns back up and running, as the SEC is going to lose some major players this year, and maybe he expects to really take off next season with some players who are not staying and who are entering the transfer portal. We have some big names here at the quarterback position. We have Dylan Raiola, the Nebraska quarterback. He was expected to do a lot this year as well. He's very versatile. Most people may know him as the Patrick Mahomes lookalike. So we'll see if he wants to go to Texas Tech. I know there's a lot of rumors of him going to maybe Michigan if they are able to get that culture going. Another quarterback, DJ Lagway from Florida. He's another quarterback in the transfer portal. Now, they did just hire John Summerall as their head coach, and a lot of reports are coming out that in those meetings with Summerall, they just have a difference of opinion as to what this culture and what this team is going to be. So Lagway has entered the transfer portal. Sam Levitt from Arizona State, I mentioned what he was able to do last year with his coach Kenny Dillingham, and if you're going to be seeing Sam Levitt leave in the transfer portal, I could see why the head coach would also want to get out of there. Maybe they can pair themselves up somewhere together. Brandon Sorsby, the Cincinnati quarterback, he had himself an amazing season, nearly 3,000 yards. He's going to be entering the transfer portal. Aiden Childs, Childs from Michigan State, he's somebody who's going to be entering the transfer portal as well. He was benched earlier this season, but he had a great start to the season, really airing it out. I think somebody will be lucky to pick him up as well. Somebody who maybe hasn't joined the transfer portal yet, but I am speculating is going to, is Trinidad Chambliss. He had talked in a press conference recently about the factor that he could be leaving, maybe joining Lane Kiffin over there at LSU. He said he's obviously open to seeing what is out there, and he hasn't made a decision yet. Obviously, this wouldn't come, I would expect, until after the college football playoffs. If he was to make a decision, maybe go join Lane Kiffin over there at LSU. And it's a shame because I really see this Ole Miss organization falling apart after Lane Kiffin leaving. I do think he's going to be taking a lot of these players over there with him, and expect LSU to have a great season next year if they are able to bring a lot of this offense back together. Before I cut to our next time out, I want to talk about some big players that are going to be sitting out of their bowl games, and this is going to lead to a bigger conversation. I'm going to do a podcast about it. You can check that out on Spotify and YouTube at Let's Talk Sports. That's Let's TAWK Sports, or on my website at letstawksports.com. But this is something of a greater conversation with the bowl games going on right now. And there's some big names who are going to be sitting out. Byron Brown, South Florida's quarterback, he has been a dog all season long. We saw him do it with his legs. They weren't able to make the playoffs, but I would have loved to see what Brown would be able to do there in that kind of atmosphere. Another big player sitting out, Chris Brazzell, the second for Tennessee, one of their lead wide receivers of the past few years, somebody who's really exciting to watch. He is now going to be sitting out. You also have Jordan Tyson, one of my favorite wide receivers in college football, somebody I think is going to make a huge impact on any team he joins next year in the NFL. He's the Arizona State wide receiver. He is going to be sitting out as well. And then this is something that I work for 69 News, and we had reported, but I haven't seen an official statement yet. That's Nick Singleton for Penn State. He seemingly is going to be sitting out as well, as he may be joining the NFL draft. And this is kind of the speculation and just the kind of camaraderie going around with the college football bowl games right now, is the fact that nobody wants to get out there. Nobody wants to get hurt. There's no real reward at the end of the day. If you win the Pop-Tart Bowl, you could watch the Pop-Tart come out of the toaster, but there's nothing really drawing these guys to playing these bowl games anymore. Now, I can't say this is something that hasn't already happened. We've seen the bowl games over the past few years lose their lust, but now we're starting to see it in the fact that, now that you have a broader playoff format, you're not seeing any of these bowl games just be out there for these players to join. We saw the same thing with Notre Dame. They have turned down a bowl game entirely. So I just think the bowl games are losing everything that they once were. I don't think that they'll ever get rid of them, just given the fact of the sponsorships and everything else. But you're just going to continue to see the talent in these games fall out. I know my brother's going to be at the Pinstripe game. That will be Penn State and Clemson. So excited to watch that one. But other than that, I think the bowl games are starting to lose that lust, that everything that is good about a bowl game. So we'll see what happens with that going forward. But we're going to take a quick timeout. Stay tuned here. You'll listen to Locker Room Buzz on 95.3 WCHE. I'm your host, CJ Tully, and again, lots going on in college football. This weekend starts the college football playoffs, and there's so many amazing matchups that we got to get into here. I'll break it all down for you. Starting off on Friday night, we're going to have an SEC matchup, a rematch of game we saw earlier this season. Alabama going to take on Oklahoma. Alabama's 10-3 on the season. Oklahoma 10-2, but Alabama has not looked like the same team since their last matchup. Oklahoma won that one 23-21. John Mateer in that game was 15 for 23 with 138 yards. He rushed for 23 yards with a touchdown as well. It is important to note, though, for this Oklahoma offense, no wide receiver or running back was able to reach 40 yards. So this was a John Mateer game. And the defense, they were a huge part in this as well. They did let up about 400 total yards of offense, but they made some great halftime adjustments. They had 3 interceptions in the game, including a pick 6 by Eli Bowen, and that was the difference maker in this game. We'll look to see this Oklahoma defense be the difference maker again. And on the Alabama side of things, this is a team that I was very high on in the middle of the season. Yes, they had the early loss to Florida State. It looked like this team was not going to be able to get over the hump. It looked like Kalen DeBoer was not the guy for the SEC, but they went on a very long stretch of hard SEC football where they had to play Vanderbilt, they played Georgia, they played Missouri. There were a lot of great teams in this stretch for Alabama that showed me a lot about what the fight is inside of them, but we haven't really seen that as much of late. You have Ty Simpson, 24 for 42 with 326 yards, a touchdown, and an interception in that last matchup. Daniel Hill had the biggest game on the ground for them in that one, 60 yards for 2 touchdowns. And then Josh Cuevas, 6 receptions for 80 yards and a touchdown. You didn't even see their best wide receivers touching the ball all that much. You do want to watch for Torrey Blaylock over there for Oklahoma, 444 yards on the season with 4 touchdowns, and Isaiah Signetti III, 948 yards with 7 touchdowns. For Alabama, their go-to guy with Ty Simpson has been Jeremy Bernard, 762 yards with 7 touchdowns, and Isaiah Horton, 430 yards with 8 touchdowns. A name that you might mention if you know Alabama football I left out there is Ryan Williams. He has not been the same guy this season, over 900 yards just a season ago, but he hasn't really been able to find that rhythm. Ty Simpson has not really been able to connect with him down the field as well. After such an amazing season last year, there was so much expectation and hype around what Ryan Williams could be, one of the best wide receivers in college football, and it has just not paid out in this game here. And we saw it again in that the SEC championship game against Georgia, where Ty Simpson was not able to get the offense going whatsoever. -3 rushing yards on the day for this Alabama offense. Jam Miller was obviously out, the lead back for Alabama. Still uncertain as to whether or not he's going to be playing this game coming up this week. We'll look to keep an eye on that. You can follow me on LRBuzz_pod on Instagram for the latest in that. But if he's not able to go and they're not able to get anything going out of the backfield, that's going to make this Alabama offense very one-dimensional, and that's something we've seen them struggle with a lot this season, where if they're not able to get the wide receivers involved, if Jeremy Bernard can't get involved, only 60 yards for him in that game against Georgia, Those are the kind of things that are going to damage this Alabama offense and are going to make it very simple for this Oklahoma team to use the home field advantage under the Friday night lights to get this win over Alabama, and that's exactly how I see it playing out. I see a huge John Mateer game where he's not holding back what he's able to do on the ground, which is, again, something we've seen earlier this year where after that injury, and he came back against Texas, and a few games after that, we were able to see John Mateer slowly start to get himself back into that ground game. We saw with the touchdown against Alabama earlier this year. I do think this Oklahoma team picks up the win here. I think it'll be a full touchdown score game where they're able to pick up the win. And I just think this Alabama team is going to have to look in the mirror and figure some things out next season. Again, I mentioned Kalen DeBoer as a possible coaching candidate for Michigan. If he goes out the door, what is this Alabama team going to be left with? Ty Simpson is seriously starting to slump here for this team, but we'll see what happens. Give me Oklahoma in this game at the number 8 seed. The next game we're going to have is going to be on Saturday. We're going to have Miami 10-2 on the season at Texas A&M at College Station. Now, this is a Miami team that snuck their way into the playoffs after a lot of things going on, a lot of confusion about whether it's going to be them or Notre Dame. Obviously, they get the bid over Notre Dame. Notre Dame not happy about that. I'm not happy about that. I think if that was something that was going to be factored in was the head-to-head, that should have been factored in well before we come down to the final playoff bracket, but the ACC needed a representative. But that's a reign I'll get to, or I've gotten to, different days. But Miami headed to Texas A&M. This is going to be a really interesting matchup. You look at these offenses, and they both have a quarterback who, if they throw the interceptions and they don't play their best, it damages the entire team and the entire formula as to what they're going to be able to do on the offensive side of the ball. Miami's 2 losses this season were to Louisville, and then on the road against SMU, where they lost in overtime. 2 huge ACC losses for Miami, seemingly knocking them out of any contention for an ACC championship game, as they were not able to compete in that one. But it is important to note, as I mentioned with Carson Beck and throwing the interceptions, 4 interceptions in that Louisville game for Carson Beck, including the pick that sealed the game for Louisville. So we'll see what Miami is able to bring. Carson Beck has been playing better football of late. 3 touchdowns in their most recent game against Pitt. He has over 3,000 yards on the season, 25 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. Now, somebody else to keep an eye on in that Pitt game was Malachi Toney with 126 yards and a touchdown. On the season now, 970 yards with 7 touchdowns. He has been the guy that Carson Beck has gone to the most to finish out this season. Early on in the season, it was C.J. Daniels, the transfer from LSU, that we are seeing getting the ball a lot. He also has 7 touchdowns on the season. But I do think it's going to come down to Beck finding Toney and then being creative on offense. You also have Mark Fletcher Jr. at running back. He has over 600 yards this season. But I don't think the run game is going to be where the difference is made for this Miami team. It's going to be Carson Beck finding his receivers and not turning the ball over. As we know, that is going to be the number one issue with Carson Beck is the turnovers. Moving over to the Texas A&M side of things, this A&M team kind of works the same way when it comes to what the quarterback is able to do. We have Marcel Reed at the helm for Texas A&M. This season, he's been able to get it done through the air and on the ground. He has 2,932 yards on the season with 25 touchdowns and 10 interceptions, the same stat line there that you're seeing with Carson Beck. But in their most recent game against Texas, we saw Marcel Reed throw 2 interceptions, and we back it up just a few games before that. We saw Marcel Reed throw more interceptions against South Carolina, where they did come back with a huge halftime readjustment to be able to pick up that win. The defense allowing no points in the second half. But Marcel Reed, if he is not on his game, we've seen how it affects everything that goes with this Texas A&M team. On the ground, you're going to have Reuben Owens II, 618 yards on the season as he is filled in for Le'Veon Moss, who went out earlier this season with an injury. Reuben Owens can be a difference maker in this game, but you got to look at these wide receivers for A&M. The best wide receiving core, in my opinion, in college football right now. You have Mario Craver and KC Concepcion. Concepcion, 886 yards this season with 9 touchdowns. Opposing him, you have Mario Craver with 825 yards and 4 interceptions. So, yes, those two are going to be very lethal, but where can we see the secret weapon? Where is somebody going to get the edge? That's where I think Ashton Bethel-Roman, the wide receiver for Texas A&M, is going to be the difference maker. He's their third string, and he stepped up in a huge way in that South Carolina game where we saw Mario Craver go out hurt on the season. He has 459 yards with 5 touchdowns. I do think Ashton Bethel-Roman will be the difference maker, as well as this Texas A&M defense, one of the best defenses on third down. Expect them to show up big. The place is going to be rocking. It's going to be so loud there in College Station. Give me Texas A&M to win this one. I'm saying by 10 points. I think they handle this Miami offense. I think Beck makes some costly turnovers, as I don't think he's going to be built for this moment. And then the conversation is all going to come back to this should have been Notre Dame in this game, and that would have been a rematch from a game earlier this season where A&M was able to go on the road and beat Notre Dame. Before I get off this game, though, I do also want to mention the fact that they were ranked number 3 majority of the season. They take that one loss to Texas and find themselves all the way down to the 7th spot. I think that was a little dramatic. I do think that this A&M team is better than people are giving them credit for. Even to go 11-1 in the SEC, that's saying a lot about this team. It's saying a lot about the makeup of this team, and their head coach is a complete dog, and I think this team gets it done. I believe this team will get it done. Moving on now to another game that was a rematch earlier this season. That is Tulane. They're 11-2 on the season. They'll be taking on Ole Miss, who is 11-1 on the season. Now, as I mentioned, this game was played earlier this season where Tulane was able to not really hang into this one as Ole Miss wins this one 35-10, and this was a complete domination. And not saying I expect the exact same thing here, as there's a lot of variables that have changed since then. But again, does Tulane deserve to be in here? Obviously, everybody knows I have a very close tie with them now, as I was able to talk to Jake Retzlaff and John Summerall, their head coach. But recently, Tulane has won their American Conference Championship. They win 34-21 over North Texas. They looked dominant. This was a North Texas team that was throwing for 500 yards a game, and Tulane just did not allow that to happen. Jake Retzlaff had one of his best games of the season, 145 yards through the air with 49 on the ground and 2 rushing touchdowns. That's something we've seen with Retzlaff, is he needs to get it going on the ground. After that Tulane Temple game that I was at, Jake Retzlaff was asked about the fact as to why he's not running as much. Was it due to injury? And he had said that coming down to the end of the season, everybody's banged up and you can't expect anybody to let up. So you need to play good, aggressive football all season long. You have to finish it out. So he is now rushing a lot more on the season. He has 610 rushing yards with 16 rushing touchdowns, so we know that's where the difference will be made. Looking again on the ground game here with Tulane, Jamari McClure. He has been a bright spot here for this team as the season is wound out. 22 carries for 121 yards and a touchdown in that American Conference Championship game. Now, starting the season, he was a sprinter coming out of high school. Nobody really expected anything. He made some early mistakes with this team in Tulane. He now has started to get it going. He's really breaking through. And I talked to a reporter for Tulane, and he said that this is a guy that people were sleeping on, and he's finally getting the opportunities now, and he's getting it done, and he is blessed for those opportunities. So look to see him perform well in this game as well. Now, no receiver did hit 40 yards for this Tulane offense in their previous matchup, so that's something to keep an eye on, as they're a very run-heavy team. Summerall is staying to coach throughout the playoffs, although he will be joining Florida next season, so look for that to be an important thing here. And the defense for them had 3 interceptions, including a pick 6 and 2 fumble recoveries in that American Conference Championship game. So Tulane's defense finally stepping up as well and being able to costly turnovers. On the other side of things, we have Trinidad Chambliss with 3,000 yards this season, 18 touchdowns with 3 interceptions. He's also rushed for 6 touchdowns. Kawan Lacey, though, he is a difference maker with 1,200 yards and 20 touchdowns on the season. Pete Golding is going to be coaching this team, as you have seen. Lane Kiffin obviously leaving. We'll see what kind of culture issues that causes with this team, if they're able to come out here and fight for Pete Golding, or if they all have one foot out the door, ready to leave for LSU as well. And they were able to keep Charlie Weiss Jr. as their offensive coordinator. He is obviously also leaving with Lane Kiffin, but they allowed him to be able to stay here and coach with this Ole Miss team throughout the playoffs. In their last meeting, as I mentioned, Ole Miss wins 45-10. You saw Retzlaff in that game have nothing going for himself. 56 yards through the air and just 51 on the ground. He was their lead rusher. Chambliss on the other side, though, he had 307 yards through the air, 2 passing touchdowns, and 112 yards on the ground. Kawan Lacey had 2 touchdowns on the ground as well. You look at the overall breakdown of this game, and you saw Tulane go for 282 yards, while Ole Miss stomps that at 548. I sadly do believe Ole Miss is going to win this game. They're at home. Tulane is obviously going to have a lot to fight for, but again, you have a head coach with one foot out the door. This is going to be a Jake Retzlaff have-to-be dominant game. I hope to see him go for two touchdowns on the ground, maybe throw for 2 as well. And then you need to see Jamari McClure get it going early, really show that this Ole Miss defense can't stop them. And that is the one bright spot for Tulane, is this Ole Miss defense hasn't been all that great, but their offense is unstoppable. So if they're able to get a few stops, maybe force a few turnovers like you did in the American Conference Championship, that's the way I see Tulane fighting in this game. But I do think at the end of the day, you're going to see Ole Miss pull out the win. And I believe they're favored by 17.5 points. I do think Tulane will cover that, but we'll be curious to see how much this Ole Miss offense fights for their new head coach. We do have one more game to break down, but I'll get it after this timeout. So stay tuned here. Listen to Locker Room Buzz on 95.3 WCHE. back to Locker Room Buzz. We have a few breaking news things here going on within the sports world that I want to talk about. Starting off here, we'll stay on college football as we have some breaking news that Trinidad Chambliss might be sitting out for Ole Miss. Now, again, I don't know how much leg this has to it, but this would be interesting if Trinidad Chambliss does sit out. This would be a failure of culture after Lane Kiffin has lost. I still don't believe it's going to happen, but there's a lot of rumors going on right now on social media that this could be the case, as the Orange Bowl boys are the ones reporting that, and College Football Alerts has reposted it. So pretty big names there reposting that. But we'll see what happens. If he does sit out of this, that changes a lot when it comes to this Tulane game. And I would think Tulane would be the favorite, or not the favorite, but a lot closer ties there. Some other breaking news going on, though, in the Philadelphia sports world. We have Brad Keller signing with the Phillies on a 2-year deal. Now we'll see how much of a difference this can make with this Phillies bullpen. We've seen the issues they've had in the past. You add Duran last year, you re-signed him, but a few years ago you didn't bring back Estevez, and we still are seeing the possibility of Jose Alvarado coming back. We just lost Jordan Romano, which, praise the Lord, he is gone. But we'll see what Brad Keller can do for this team coming off a season with the Cubs. 3 saves, 2.07 ERA with 75 strikeouts and a .96 whip. Again, it can't hurt this bullpen. We obviously need as much help as we can get, but we'll see what Brad Keller is able to add to this Phillies team. Love to see that we're still making some moves. Hope there's still more to come. Would love another bat in this lineup. I guess I'll just get right into the Phillies news then before we finish out this college football news, as we do have the Phillies breaking the news now. They also signed Adolis Garcia a few days ago. Adolis was hitting .227 last year with 19 home runs, 75 RBIs with a .665 OPS. Now, Adolis is one of my favorite players in baseball. This has been a known fact for years now. In his time with the Rangers, he's always been my guy. But he started to fall off very hard in the last few years. About 3 years ago, would have loved to have Adolis on this team in that World Series run that the Rangers had. But we started to see the lackluster play and the strikeouts continue to increase and the home runs continue to go down. So I'm not saying this is a bad move. It's a Max Kepler move. It's a Whit Merrifield move. It's just that one guy that we get for a 1-year contract, $10 million. It is what it is, kind of an experiment. My bigger issue comes to what next. You obviously are now promoting Justin Crawford. They made that very clear. But we didn't bring him up last year, and I'm still a little skeptical as to what he's going to be in the MLB. I think I continue to beat this dead horse, that there was so much of an opportunity to bring somebody in like a Justin Crawford, like an Andrew Painter last year, see what they had before you now just rely on them to be a key piece in this lineup. Nick Castellanos is going to be out the door. Still not sure how they're going to go about that, as nobody seemingly wants him. Harrison Bader is now rumored to also not be coming back, and that's going to really irritate me. Now, you guys heard it here first. Last, March or whatever, last trade deadline when we added Harrison Bader, I was not a fan of this move whatsoever. I didn't think it was enough. But after seeing what Bader was able to bring locker room-wise and vibe-wise, this was what this team was lacking. And it came in here and he changed everything. Even his at-bat in the World Series when he was hurt and he couldn't even run. He brought so much energy to this stadium, and even on the road, it just felt like he was going to be the one fighting for this team. And now if you're not to bring him back after trading some key pieces, what is your plan going forward? He is the perfect piece here for this outfield. Brandon Marsh, I love him. He can kick the road. He is not adding anything to this team right now. You look at somebody like a Justin Crawford, we'll see what he has. But you need a key piece. You need that youth, that jolt of energy, and the daycare is not doing it. So you can get rid of that. That's all Brandon Marsh was a part of. You saw Bryson Stott. He has been falling off tremendously. You have Alec Boehm. He has been horrible his entire career. What can happen with this Phillies team? Who is going to be that key piece? I was hoping that was Harrison Bader on a 2 to 3 year contract. Just a little bit of a prove it deal. Maybe not overpay it necessarily, but bring in somebody who's going to bring culture to this team. And we're not bringing that right now. And now we're going to see Adolis Garcia. That's going to be great. Maybe he gives you some home runs. That's really what we need right now. But we still don't have that on-base guy. You have that with Bryson Stott, but he hasn't been able to do it of late. Alec Boehm, he was that guy. He hasn't necessarily done it of late. JT Realmuto, he's rumored to be coming back. Dave Dombrowski said they're still in talks. But now you're still working with that veteran core. You bring Schwarber back. You're going to have Turner. You're going to have Harper. And you're going to have JT now. I just don't know what the team is going to look like in a few years. And obviously, I don't think we're competing this year for a World Series without one more big move. Now, Alex Bregman has been rumored to be talking to a mystery team that wasn't necessarily one of the ones that were the hype of the team, like a Detroit Tigers where he was expected to go. Could that be the Phillies? Again, that doesn't add any youth to this team, but it brings a little bit more defense, and it adds a little bit on the on the bat side of things because you're not getting anything out of Bowman. We saw what Bregman was able to do for the Red Sox last year. I'm just not sure where this team is going. Of course, you guys know, didn't want Kyle Schwarber to come back, and now this all adds to that because I wouldn't be as mad with an Adolis or let's say an Alex Bregman coming in if we didn't have Schwarber's old behind to be carrying around for the next few years. So lots going on here with this Phillies team. Again, didn't expect all of this necessarily before the holiday, but hope to see something else break. I can talk to you guys next week on Christmas Eve about maybe Dave Dombrowski wants to give Philly a big treat before the holidays. Again, Adolis Garcia, though, signing on a 1-year deal, and you have Brad Keller signing on a 2-year deal. So we'll see what this Phillies team looks like. Still no word on whether or not Zach Wheeler is going to be returning here for the Phillies. So, again, I'll be keeping you guys posted on everything with the Phillies, but those are the latest. And, again, Trinidad Chambliss and other breaking news, possibly not playing for Ole Miss on Saturday. But we'll, again, keep you posted on all of that. We do have one more college football game to break down here for this weekend. That's number 12, JMU at 12-1 on the season, taking on Oregon, also 11-1 on the season, ranked number 5. The JMU won the Sun Belt Championship 31-14 over Troy. They had a slow start, but they were able to get it done at the end. Alonzo Barrett III, he had 93 yards, a touchdown, and an interception in this one. But he's another quarterback that uses his legs with 85 yards and a touchdown. On the season, he has 2,500 yards passing with 21 touchdowns and 8 interceptions, including 544 yards on the ground with 14 touchdowns. Now, somebody to really keep an eye on here with this JMU offense is I know nobody is going to be too familiar with anybody on this team. Wayne Knight, he's their running back. 21 carries in their championship game, 212 yards with a touchdown. On the season, 1,200 yards with 9 rushing touchdowns. So he is going to be the difference maker here for this JMU team. They are going to try and run down this Oregon defense, but this Oregon defense is so good. I'm not sure how well that's going to work out for them. This game, Oregon is favored by 21.5 points, and in all honesty, I could see them covering that, and I don't usually like large spreads, but Oregon is very dominant. I think they are the sleeper team to win the national championship. I don't think they've gotten the love they deserve. I've said time and time again, I believe they had one of the trickiest schedules in the Big Ten. They were able to beat Penn State on the road in the whiteout while Penn State still had all of their key pieces. They went on the road and they beat Iowa. They also beat USC at home, who was a very high-powered offense. And they went on the road to finish the season at Washington, who was considered one of the best wins for Ohio State. So if you want to count it that way, you have to count it for Oregon as well. Dante Moore is going to be leading the way here for this Oregon offense. 2,700 yards on the season, 24 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. He was another possible Heisman candidate. So we'll see what he's able to do here in the playoffs. And this running attack of Oregon is going to be the difference maker. This is where I think that they just stomp JMU because they're going to be able to run the ball so well down JMU's throat. Noah Whittington, 774 yards this season with 6 touchdowns. Jordan Davidson, 535 yards and 13 touchdowns. And they haven't even had to use Malachi Hughes, who was my guy. He played for Tulane last year. He had thousands of yards, comes over here and does not even touch the ball. It's kind of a disappointment in my opinion. And then on the wide receiver end of things, Malik Benson, 526 yards, 4 touchdowns. Kenyon Sadiq at tight end, 490 yards and 8 touchdowns. Give me Oregon to win this one in a stomping. Again, I do believe they can cover that. There's nothing on this JMU team besides Wayne Knight, who I mentioned, but you're not going to be able to run the ball if you're down 15 points. So I seriously think that this could be a stomping by Oregon, and it's going to continue that notion that these teams don't belong in the college football playoffs if they're not able to get these big wins in the playoffs. There's going to be a lot as to how this can be fixed. I'll probably talk about that more after the college football playoffs as to where I think the college football bracket can be adjusted and how teams can maybe fight some of these higher-ranked Power 4 conference schools in the regular season. And if they don't win those, they don't belong, which in that aspect would then tell you that Tulane doesn't belong after they got stomped by 35 points to Ole Miss earlier this season. But again, that's a conversation for after the playoffs, after we see how this all adjusts, maybe even after this weekend. Because if JMU and Tulane give a good fight, then they're going to keep the G5 teams in here, and we'll see what happens with that. But before we get out of here, there's one piece of NFL news that I want to break down before we get out of here. That is the Bucs and what is going on with them. This is a team that I had projected very highly this season in the NFL. They're now 7-7 on the season, and they've lost 5 of their last 6 games. Their only win coming against the Cardinals, where they only won that one by 3 points. 20-17. Now, they've dealt with a lot of injuries this season. Mike Evans has been out. Chris Godwin Jr. has been out. And Emeka Mbuka has missed some games as well. I believe Bucky Irving was even out. So, yes, they've had to deal with some injuries, but they always had somebody to go to. So I can't necessarily say they had nothing at any of these points where the injuries were occurring. They finish out the season at the Panthers, at the Dolphins, and then versus the Panthers at home. Now, those are going to be huge games. Those are the two teams here fighting for the South, is the Panthers and the Bucks. Baker Mayfield on the season, just under 3,000 yards. He has 22 touchdowns with 9 interceptions. The ground game is where they've really been able to get it done with the injuries to the wide receiving core. You have Rashad White, 494 yards with 4 touchdowns. Bucky Irving going for 413 yards this season with a touchdown. Emeka Egbuka has been a bright spot for this team. The young wide receiver out of Ohio State has 870 yards with 6 touchdowns. Again, Mike Evans missing a lot of the season, so he had to step up in a huge way. But this Bucs team is just not able to find ways to win at the end of games. We've seen the Saints, we put up fights against them. We've seen the Falcons most recently on Thursday Night Football. So I'm not sure where we're going to find this Bucs team. I don't know what has to change. I guess the defense could play a little bit better, but this Bucs offense should be stomping a lot more teams than they are. And I'm going to be curious to see where they can fix things going down to the end of the season. And if they're able to beat the Panthers or split that series and find themselves a playoff spot. Going over the playoff bracket real quick. Right now in the NFC, we have the Rams as the 1 seed. We have the Eagles at the 3, the Bears at the 2, Buccaneers at the 4, Seahawks 5, 49ers 6, Packers at 7. On the outside looking in, you have the Lions, Panthers, and the Cowboys holding on with a 1% chance to make the playoffs. On the AFC side of things, a lot of shakeup here than what we've seen in years past. You have the Broncos at number 1, Patriots 2, Jaguars 3. They've been playing phenomenal at 10-4, and number 1 in the AFC South. The Steelers at 4, Chargers at 5, Bucks at 6, or Bills at 6, and the Texans at 7, currently sitting at 9-5, and they have turned their entire season around. So love to see that for the Texans and C.J. Carr. And Davis Mills was able to really fill in well there while C.J. Stroud was out. But that will do it here for Locker Room Buzz. I'm CJ Tully. Be sure to check out the show next week on Christmas Eve. Again, it's still going to be sports themed with a little bit of a Christmas twang to it. So check that out as well. I'm always here on Wednesdays, 11 to 12 here on 95.3 WCHE. If you missed some of the show, you can go online and watch it at 95.3 WCHE.com. Thank you, everybody, and have a Merry Christmas and a safe holiday.